There is a hush that falls upon the mind when it stumbles, for just a moment, into the raw and wordless knowing that the game has always been rigged. The world is not a home. It is a field of want, of ceaseless thirst, a silent machinery that turns every heartbeat into longing. Beneath every ambition, behind every whispered hope, there is the ghostly signature of absence, the soft ache of what cannot be possessed. You enter this life not as a blank slate, but as a vessel already trembling, already shaped by hunger, by ancient tides of wanting that are not yours, and never were. You wake to the fact of yourself as if it were an accident, flesh already bound to craving, a mind pressed into service by a will that remains forever unsatisfied. There is no explanation for why you must want only the evidence, everywhere, that wanting is all you have ever known. People speak of willpower as if it were a crown, a proof of sovereignty, but the truth is quieter, more devastating. Willpower is not mastery, but the evidence of your enslavement. You are not its author, but its servant, driven by invisible compulsions as old as blood. The urge to strive, to accumulate, to climb above others, or to retreat into the safety of withdrawal, all of it springs from a wound, not a choice. What you call your will is simply the repetition of ancient pain, rehearsed in the theater of your days. You may tell yourself that freedom lies in the assertion of will, that the strong bend reality to their purpose, while the weak merely adapt. But behind every act of will, there is a deeper captivity, the silent contract you never signed, but which binds you all the same. Every wish is a chain, every desire a subtle shackle. Even your most triumphant moments, the victories, the breakthroughs, are only brief interruptions in the cycle of dissatisfaction. The mountain is climbed only to reveal another, higher peak, just beyond the horizon of your exhaustion. It is not failure that haunts you, but the certainty that even your greatest successes dissolve into ash the moment they are touched. The new job, the new love, the new horizon, all of it fades, and the ache returns. The will is not sated by attainment, it is only inflamed, the hunger sharpened by what it cannot hold. In the stillness of midnight, when the world's distractions are stripped away, a different kind of clarity emerges, harsh and beautiful in its austerity. You see, perhaps for the first time, that everything you have done has been in service to a master that cannot be named, a yearning that cannot be appeased. This is the first wound, the knowledge that to live is to lack, and to lack is to suffer. Modernity, with its blinding lights and its shrill promises, is a theater built atop this ache. It promises solutions, distractions, improvements, 1,000 small anesthetics for the ache of existence. Productivity, wellness, self-optimization, these are not medicines, but masks. The endless scroll of images, the ceaseless chatter of social validation, are only the latest forms of the same ancient dream, to escape the gnawing pain of unfulfilled longing. But there is no escape, only postponement. Each new device, each new philosophy, each new lover or friend is pressed into service as a temporary salve. The marketplace is a cathedral of distraction, a place where the faithful come to be promised. Yet again, that relief is just one purchase away. Beneath the glamour, beneath the feverish pursuit, the wound remains. The will gnaws, and the self grows gaunt with hunger. You learn, eventually, that the world is not made for your happiness, nor for your fulfillment. It is a place of ceaseless movement, where every joy is tinged with loss and every gain with the dread of its vanishing. The lover grows cold, the body decays, the once bright dream crumbles to dust. What you love, you will lose, and what you seek will dissolve as soon as you grasp it. To exist is to watch the world slip away from you, grain by grain, moment by moment, until you are left with nothing but the memory of what could never be held. Even the highest achievements, art, philosophy, wisdom, are only more refined forms of suffering. The poet writes because the world wounds him. The philosopher thinks because he cannot bear the world as it is. Beauty arises from the ache, not from its absence. In the gallery of human striving, everything is shadowed by its own futility, yet luminous with the strange, cold light of clarity. You search for meaning as the dying man searches for water in the desert, believing that somewhere there must be a well that does not run dry. Yet every meaning you find is borrowed, conditional, built atop the trembling scaffolding of illusion. Religion, ideology, love, all of it is an answer to the unasked question, an attempt to pacify the will by giving it a story to inhabit. But the story cannot hold, the center does not hold. Meaning evaporates beneath the gaze of suffering, as dew vanishes in the morning sun. Suffering is not an error, not a deviation from the script, but the ink in which your life is written. It is the substance, not the shadow. To suffer is not to fail. It is simply to be awake, to be alive, to the sharp edges of reality. The animal does not question its pain, but you, possessed by consciousness, cursed with reflection, are condemned to feel both the pain and the knowledge of pain, the ache and the awareness of its inescapability. There are moments, brief and shattering, when the machinery is glimpsed directly, the face in the mirror grows strange, the old songs lose their sweetness, the world's color drains to gray. The ego recoils from these moments, desperate to reassert its fictions, to stitch together the rags of hope and identity. But there is no refuge in distraction that lasts, and no mask that does not slip. You see, at last, that you are not the captain of your soul, but the passenger tossed by currents you did not choose, unable to steer, unable to disembark. Every relationship is shaped by the shadow of absence, every love story a rehearsal for loss. Even in moments of closeness, there is a trembling distance, a knowledge that the other can never truly be possessed, never truly understood. Loneliness is not a defect, but the ground of being a silent companion who outlasts every comfort. People fill their days with busyness, believing that movement will spare them from reflection. Yet in the quiet moments waiting for sleep, standing at the threshold of a new disappointment, the emptiness wells up. You realize, with a cold kind of tenderness, that most of what you do is a strategy for avoiding this moment. The moment when you see, with unblinking eyes, the futility at the heart of striving. Yet there is a strange relief in this clarity, a letting go, a dissolving of pretense. When you see the machinery for what it is, you cease to demand that it produce happiness. You watch the motions of desire, the tides of hope and disappointment, as one might watch the wind move through barren trees. You do not resist, nor do you celebrate. You simply witness the play of suffering, the endless repetition of hunger and loss. This is the second wound, the awareness that what you call yourself is only a bundle of impulses, stitched together by habit and memory, animated by the restless will. There is no true autonomy, only the illusion of agency. You are lived by forces you cannot see, compelled by scripts you did not write. The self is not a fortress, but a wound that walks, gathering stories as a cloak against the cold. The world is indifferent to your pain. The stars do not notice your prayers, nor do the seasons alter for your benefit. There is a dignity in this indifference, a purity that strips away sentiment and exposes the bone. To exist in such a world is to be both humbled and liberated, for nothing is owed and nothing can be lost that was ever truly yours. There is no salvation in willpower. The one who conquers his appetites finds only new ones waiting, disguised in subtler forms. The ascetic, the conqueror, the lover, the monk, each is driven by the same fundamental compulsion, the hope that suffering can be outwitted, that the will can be satisfied or stilled. But the will is an abyss without bottom, a thirst that deepens the more it drinks. In the stillness that follows disillusionment, a different kind of seeing becomes possible. You begin to recognize the patterns, the repetitions, the inevitability of loss. You watch as people chase after shadows, fame, wealth, power, believing that these will insulate them from the ache. But the famous are haunted, the wealthy are anxious, the powerful are beset by new fears. No one escapes. The world is a house with no exits. You search for the place where the will is at peace, but every destination dissolves into another horizon. There is no arrival, only the ongoing movement, the restless turning. To live is to be exiled from satisfaction, to wander in search of a home that does not exist. There are those who claim that suffering ennobles, that pain refines the soul. But pain is not a teacher, only a fact. It reveals, but it does not redeem. The search for redemptive suffering is only another evasion, another attempt to dignify the unendurable. Suffering simply is the foundation upon which every pleasure rests, the shadow that gives shape to the light. Love itself is marked by futility, a longing for union that can never be fulfilled. To love is to expose oneself to loss, to offer the heart as a hostage to the world's indifference. Every tenderness carries within it the seed of sorrow. Every embrace is a rehearsal for goodbye. Yet we love, not because we are noble, but because we are compelled, drawn by the same will that drives all creatures into the arms of risk. The child clings to the parent, the lover to the beloved, the old man to his fading memories. All are expressions of the same hunger, the same futile protest against impermanence. There is no safety in love, only the certainty of eventual pain. Yet the alternative detachment, withdrawal, brings only a colder, quieter suffering. To be alive is to oscillate between the agony of attachment and the bleakness of solitude. Culture itself is a monument to the will's restlessness. Art, science, philosophy, these are not solutions, but responses to the wound. The cathedral and the laboratory, the novel and the theory, each is an attempt to bear witness, to give shape to the shapeless ache. Yet, even the greatest achievements are fleeting. The stone crumbles, the book is forgotten, the insight fades. The will is not silenced by beauty or by truth, only momentarily distracted. The wise do not seek to conquer the will, nor to indulge it. They simply see it for what it is. The endless motion of a world that is always falling, always vanishing, always becoming something other than what it was. There is no rest, no arrival, no final satisfaction. To see this is not to despair, but to be sober, to walk with eyes open in a landscape stripped of illusion. Even despair is a form of hope, a hope inverted, but hope nonetheless. True sobriety is the end of hope, the relinquishing of every demand that the world be otherwise. It is not resignation, but clarity, the acceptance that suffering is not a problem to be solved, but a fact to be endured. The wise do not demand joy, they simply bear witness to the beauty and terror of what is. You may ask, is there comfort in such a vision? Only the comfort of truth, and the strange calm that comes from ceasing to struggle against what cannot be changed. In the presence of suffering, the soul grows silent, like a lake unruffled by wind. There is a dignity in endurance, a quiet strength in refusing to participate in the theater of false promises. This is the third wound. The knowledge that even your attempts to escape are part of the machinery, that every strategy for avoiding pain is itself a repetition of pain. You realize that there is nowhere to go, nothing to do, no answer to be found. The will is not a path out of suffering, but the very engine of suffering itself. The stories we tell of progress, of redemption, of ultimate meaning are only lullabies sung to calm the frightened child within. But the child grows old, and the stories lose their power. What remains is the fact of existence, bare and unsweetened, the slow movement of time, the certainty of loss, the endless repetition of desire. Yet within this bleakness there is a kind of liberation, the freedom that comes from surrendering the illusion of control. You see the world as it is, not as a prison to be escaped, nor as a paradise to be regained, but as a field of suffering to be witnessed without expectation. The ego grows quiet, the will is seen but not obeyed. There is a gentle beauty in this surrender, a tenderness born not of hope but of compassion for all that suffers. You recognize your kinship with every creature, each one driven by the same unsolvable hunger, each one searching for what cannot be found. In the silence of this recognition, the barriers between self and other dissolve. The world becomes a single wound, a single longing, a single unanswered prayer. You walk through the world without demanding that it heal you. You do not ask for consolation, nor do you seek to numb yourself with distraction. You watch the play of light and shadow, the rise and fall of hope, the endless procession of beginnings and endings. You accept, with a kind of sorrowful gratitude, the gift of awareness, the burden of seeing. In the end, there is no transcendence, no final escape from the machinery of suffering. There is only the slow burning clarity of surrender, the acceptance that the will was never yours, that the prison has no door, and that freedom is only the dissolution of the illusion of self. The candle burns down, the night grows quiet, and in the stillness that remains, the soul finds its home not in triumph, but in the gentle vanishing of desire. If you would like the script to continue into more depth, just say so, and I will weave the darkness further. There is a silence that gathers beneath all striving, a silence thick with the dust of failed ambitions and withered dreams. It waits at the edges of each intention, revealing itself when the will falls quiet, when hope is too tired to protest. This silence does not offer comfort. It simply uncovers what has always been suffering as the pulse beneath existence, the rhythm to which all things must dance. One learns, slowly, to feel the weight of this silence, to recognize in it the unmoving center around which the restless world revolves. Even joy carries the premonition of its own end. The laughter of a child is already shadowed by the coming sorrow, each tenderness a prelude to loss. The sweetness of the moment is only sharpened by the certainty that it cannot last, that every embrace loosens, every promise withers in time's indifferent wind. Suffering is not simply an event, but the shape of experience itself, woven through pleasure, as shadow is woven through light. Illusion is not a choice, but a necessity for the weary mind. It drapes itself around consciousness like a fog, softening the edges of pain, dulling the sharpness of absence. Without illusion, every morning would taste of ash, and the weight of futility would press the breath from the chest. So, the mind invents meaning, carves hope from the air, paints significance, where there is only the ceaseless repetition of cause and effect. Yet the illusion never fully satisfies. It merely delays the encounter with emptiness, postpones the cold dawn that always arrives. What does it mean to detach? When detachment itself becomes another mask for despair. To step back from desire is not to be liberated, but to be suspended an observer of the endless machinery, feeling both the pain of longing and the chill of its absence. Detachment is not a triumph, but a slow withering of the will, a gradual withdrawal from the stage where joy and agony play out their relentless scene. There is relief in stepping away, but it is the relief of numbness, not of peace. The world moves with the momentum of all that came before, and each life is carried along like a leaf on an unfeeling current. Agency dissolves upon close inspection. Every decision is revealed as the offspring of circumstances, every preference as the residue of earlier wounds. To say, "I want," is only to echo the voiceless will that animates all things, the blind compulsion that drives the ant and the emperor alike. Contemplation grows heavy when the truth is allowed its full measure. The spectacle of suffering is endless. Faces twisted by longing, bodies bent beneath invisible burdens, hearts quietly breaking beneath the smooth surface of daily routine. Compassion arises not from sentiment, but from recognition, the quiet horror of seeing in others the same wound that festers beneath one's own skin. To witness suffering without flinching is to honor the truth, even as it leaves one powerless to relieve it. Modernity offers new masks, ever more intricate, ever more dazzling. The promise of self-improvement, the cult of personal achievement, the myth of limitless possibility, each is a shimmering distraction, a desperate attempt to escape the fact that the self cannot be perfected. That willpower is the name we give to our bondage. Beneath the surface, the old patterns persist. Envy, restlessness, the dread of insignificance. The age of reason delivers no reprieve, only more refined instruments for self-deception. In the rare moments when the veil is torn, when all distraction falls away, what remains is a kind of vertigo. One sees the futility not only of personal striving, but of all striving, the endless cycle of birth and decay, hope and disappointment across the whole pageant of existence. Every culture, every era is marked by the same wound, adorned in different costumes, reciting the same ancient lines in a theater without end. There is no answer that does not ring hollow. The religious promise of redemption, the philosophical assurance of meaning, the psychological hope of wholeness, each dissolves in the acid of honest awareness. The will is not a problem to be solved, but a force to be endured, an inheritance that cannot be returned. all striving is the movement of a shadow toward a sun that never rises. To live in truth is to inhabit the space between desire and resignation, to feel both the ache of longing and the calm of surrender. There is a paradox in this condition. The more clearly the machinery is seen, the less urgent the need to escape. One learns to rest in the movement of things, not with hope, but with a grave tenderness for all that cannot be mended. In this stillness, time itself grows thin. The past is revealed as a procession of vanished moments, each marked by loss. The future as a horizon of new and certain disappointments. Only the present remains, stripped of promise, a narrow ledge above the abyss. To dwell here is to let go not only of hope, but of regret, of every story the mind invents to distract from the emptiness at the center. Even memory becomes a weight, a chain of vanished joys and unfinished pain. Nostalgia is a subtle cruelty, conjuring phantoms of happiness to remind the mind of what cannot return. The images flicker, but the substance is gone. The self that remembers is not the self that suffered. The continuity is an illusion, a story told to no one. Detachment deepens, not by will, but by the slow erosion of hope. What does it mean to awaken in a world where suffering is the root and meaning the branch? One sees, at last, that the search for consolation is the source of torment, that the desire to escape suffering is what gives it power. There is no salvation in transcendence, only the gentle sorrow of seeing through the illusion and remaining quietly in the presence of what is. To witness one's own suffering without resistance is the final act of lucidity. The mind grows still, the heart heavy but unafraid. There is nothing left to pursue, nothing left to evade. Suffering becomes transparent, no longer an enemy, but a companion, a sign that consciousness is awake in a world that cannot be otherwise. If you wish for the darkness to deepen further, speak, and the voice will continue into the abyss. There is a peculiar clarity that emerges from the fatigue of wanting. When every hope has soured, every pursuit has revealed its emptiness, the soul becomes thin and translucent, as if it were a sheet of glass through which the world's silent machinery is finally visible. The ordinary objects of desire, pleasure, security, admiration lie scattered like discarded masks. The will, exposed in its endless restlessness, has nowhere left to hide. This is not enlightenment, but exhaustion. It is not a victory, but a kind of surrender, a white flag raised not in hope of mercy, but in recognition that no mercy is coming. The will continues to move, of course. The heart continues to beat, but each movement is seen for what it is, a ripple in the surface of suffering, neither heroic nor tragic, but inevitable. Suffering loses its drama. It becomes a fact, like weather, like gravity. The pain of disappointment is not a punishment, but the consequence of existence itself, an echo of the original rupture, the ancient separation that gave rise to desire. Nothing is owed, nothing is withheld. What hurts is only the collision between what is and what the mind wishes were so. Illusion remains persistent. Even in the starkest awareness, the mind drifts toward the old narratives, the comforting stories of purpose and redemption. It takes effort to see through them, not the effort of will, but the effort of relinquishing the comfort of self-deception. The truth, once glimpsed, requires no defense. It is its own kind of nourishment, cold but sustaining, like water drawn from a stone. Others speak of transformation, of finding meaning in suffering, of growing stronger through adversity. But suffering does not transform. It wears down, it erodes, it strips away the illusion that there is anything permanent to be gained. Strength is not born, but revealed as another disguise for endurance, the animal instinct to continue, to persist in the face of futility. Love, too, is emptied of its illusions. The beloved is not a savior, but a fellow sufferer, another flicker in the endless twilight. Intimacy becomes the shared recognition of mutual helplessness, a brief respite in the ceaseless struggle to escape oneself. The longing to merge is never fulfilled, only gestured toward, as if two shadows could embrace. The detachment that follows is not a decision, but a withering of expectation. One learns to let go, not because letting go is noble, but because holding on has become impossible. Every attempt to control, to shape the world according to desire, is exposed as a repetition of the same old wound. The world does not bend, it endures, and so must you. The city moves around you with its cold pulse faces lit by screens, hands clutching for purchase, voices raised in the desperate hope of being heard. Each life is an island, separated by longing, joined only in the shared knowledge that longing will never end. There is no communion, only the mutual recognition of absence. In moments of deep night, the silence returns, heavier than before. There is a longing for relief, for oblivion, for some escape from the endless circling of thought. But relief is always temporary, and oblivion is always just out of reach. The mind returns, again and again, to the same questions, the same wounds, as if by repetition they could be resolved. The seasons turn without witness, the world continues in its blind motion. There is no audience, no judge, no cosmic ledger to balance the account of suffering. Pain is neither justified nor unjustified. It simply is. The will seeks a reason, but reasons dissolve beneath the surface of experience, leaving only the raw sensation of absence. Memory is a silent tormentor. It conjures the faces of those lost, the words never spoken, the joys that crumbled into regret. The past becomes a mausoleum, each moment preserved in the amber of nostalgia, unreachable, untouchable. The self is haunted by its own history, a parade of shadows marching endlessly through the corridors of the mind. One begins to see that all attachment is a bargain with suffering. To care is to open the door to pain. To love is to invite the inevitable farewell. Even the smallest joys are tinged with mourning, the knowledge that nothing endures, that every embrace is already a memory in the making. There is no immunity. The wise suffer alongside the foolish, the strong alongside the weak. The world does not discriminate in its indifference. It offers suffering with an even hand. To accept this is not to become invulnerable, but to abandon the hope that vulnerability can be overcome. Detachment is not an escape, but a slow recognition of boundaries, the limits of what can be known, what can be changed, what can be endured. The self recedes into the background, not out of pride, but out of necessity. There is no heroism in enduring, only the slow attrition of hope. In rare moments, a gentler clarity appears, not the clarity of understanding, but the clarity of absence, the space left behind when wanting grows quiet. Suffering remains, but it is no longer an enemy. It becomes a companion, a reminder that to exist is to participate in the world's endless cycle of hunger and loss. The machinery continues, the will persists, undeterred by awareness. One watches, quietly, as desire rises and falls, as hope flickers and dims, as the world continues its blind rotation. There is nothing to be done, nothing to be achieved. To witness is enough. If the candle should burn lower, if the night should deepen, this voice will remain a quiet echo in the chambers of awareness, unhurried, undemanding, resigned. The night stretches, indifferent and endless, pressing its silence against the windows of the soul. In this darkness, the last illusions withdraw, one by one, like figures leaving a stage, their costumes discarded, their voices faded into the hush. The self is smaller now, diminished, barely a breath against the chill. The mind, stripped of consolation, listens to its own emptiness and hears only the pulse of suffering, a low, constant tide that never recedes. What remains is not wisdom, but a kind of quiet transparency, the gaze that neither condemns nor forgives, but simply observes the world as it drifts past the edges of consciousness. Each thought passes like a cloud across the winter sky. There is no clinging, no protest, only the faint ache of awareness. The future and the past dissolve together in the grey current of time, their boundaries soft, their promises broken. It becomes clear, at last, that to be is to lack, and to lack is to ache. This truth is neither cruel nor merciful. It simply is, as stone is, as night is. All striving is a ripple in the will, all joy an interlude before returning to the same old hunger. There is no secret, no path hidden beneath the thorns, no paradise concealed behind the veil. The world's mask is thin, and beneath it there is only the ceaseless longing that animates all things. Detachment is not an escape, but a softening, an opening to the certainty that nothing endures. To see the machinery is to step back from the stage, to watch the shadows dance without mistaking them for substance. One does not rejoice, nor does one despair. Even suffering is muted by this distance, flattened into the background hum of existence. The heart still aches, but the ache has lost its urgency. It no longer pleads for an answer, no longer believes in rescue. There is a strange peace in the resignation that follows an uneasy, sober quietness that spreads through the mind like the first frost of winter. The will, though unbroken, is seen now for what it is, a blind animal, forever pacing the cage, forever convinced that freedom lies just beyond the next horizon. One watches its motions, tenderly, almost with pity, and offers no resistance, for resistance is only another form of bondage. All that remains is the witnessing, the subtle play of light against fading walls, the soft collapse of hope, the gentle departure of longing. Even the self becomes translucent, a faint impression pressed into the fabric of time. There is no triumph here, no enlightenment, only the slow uncoiling of the will's grip, a letting go that is neither chosen nor refused. The world grows quiet. The last embers of desire flicker and dissolve, their glow swallowed by the greater darkness. One does not mourn their passing. Their warmth was always borrowed, their light always brief. The truth remains, cold and unwavering. Your willpower is not yours. It is the prison, and you are the captive, tracing the same pattern in the dust, whispering the same longing to a sky that does not answer. In this stillness, even longing surrenders its voice. There is only the fading candle, the breath growing thin, the night deepening without end. The soul, stripped of hope and illusion, dissolves into the silence. Nothing is left but the clarity of being alone, unrescued, unredeemed. And so the final trace of will fades, the last ripple falls quiet, and what remains is not an ending, but the silent, unmoving presence at the heart of all things. A presence without desire, without story, without name. The darkness completes its work. The world continues. There is nothing more.